Good morning and welcome to Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. We're going to be talking about DUI laws here today. Now, in South Carolina, by some metrics, we lead the nation in the number of DUI deaths per capita, so that's not a good thing. A lot of people come to the Grand Strand and throughout South Carolina to kind of party and let loose because of our climate, because of the beaches. Well, obviously, unfortunately, that leads to a lot of DUI arrests, and we're going to be talking about here today. And as we've said in the past, this is not a show to try to tell you how to get out of an arrest or how to avoid it. Avoiding is one thing for sure, but we're not trying to give you any tricks to be able to drink and drive illegally. All right, if you have any questions about that, please feel free to give us a call. The number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. Here on the panel today to answer your questions, to my left from the Maguire Law Firm is Ian Maguire.
See you, Dave.
Also from the solicitor's office, the prosecutor amongst us is Kelsey Hall.
Thank you for having me.
And also at the end of the table, now it's been about 15 years since last time you were here, Ricky, you were here as a prosecutor.
That's correct.
Ricky Todd is with us here today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Has it been that long, Ricky? It's great to have you back, and Kelsey, it's great to have you with us, and we appreciate you being here. Ricky, I'll start with you. Tell us a little about your firm and what your firm does.
Well, I'm with the Complete Legal Defense team. We've got several attorneys there, and what we do is nothing but criminal defense. We do a lot of the DUIs locally, but pretty much anything with a criminal nature to it. High felonies is kind of our specialty area, and then we have magistrate's court as well that we work in.
And I know your founding partner, Greg McCullough, was actually one of the original panel on the show, and he was on it with us for years, and he's a great attorney, and I know you all do an outstanding job and representing people in the community that get in trouble. So it's great to have you here, and you'll have the opportunity to being a prosecutor originally and now doing defense. It probably gives you great insight into this area of the law. So thanks again for being with us. And Kelsey, you're stationed in Georgetown, is that right?
Yes, I'm part of the prosecutor's office, so we've got an office in Conway and Georgetown. I'm the only prosecutor in Georgetown that actually handles those DUI first offenses. So I handle everything that comes in.
And I know you're very busy.
Absolutely.
With that, and you do a great job so we're happy to have you here as well, and give your insight on things from a prosecutorial standpoint. And I know you both have an interest in making sure justice is done and things are fair. And if you have any questions, whether you have a family member that's been involved in a DUI type case, or you just have a question, give us a call at 843-848-8080, 843-848-8080. We have two outstanding attorneys here that can help answer your questions. Right, Dave?
And yeah, absolutely. And Ricky, since you're the one on the defense side, I'm sure a lot of people, when they find that out, and I'll ask you the same question I ask everybody on a DUI show. If somebody asks you your advice, if I get pulled over for DUI or potential DUI, should I blow or not blow as far as breathalyzers go?
What I tell everybody is they're looking for evidence, and whatever evidence that you give them, they can use against you. If you haven't had a drink, well then yes, absolutely volunteer to give what information you can, because it's going to help you. If you question that, or maybe you did have a drink, why would you provide the state with more information that they can use against you? So, do you blow or do not blow? It depends on the situation. I don't like to give more than you have to. It's just like the right to remain silent. Keep your mouth shut, and same thing with the breathalyzer. Keep your mouth shut.
But Ricky, if you had one or two drinks and you presumably blow under the limit, that would actually help your defense, wouldn't it?
It would, but can you gauge how much your blood alcohol is going to be based on the fact that you had two drinks, how much you had to eat that day, what medications you take, what things can offset your blood on that day and those drinks to make it where it's a higher percentage than anything else. Plus the machines, they're very accurate for the most part, but there's other things that can come into play. When was your last drink? Was it retained in your mouth? There's a lot of factors in there that for the most part, if you haven't had anything to drink, absolutely give them something. But there's other things that could make that reading inaccurate and make it a little bit higher. So it's kind of a play it by ear deal.
And kind of
Kelsey, I know you have some thoughts on
yes,
this.
I was like, I've got a few thoughts. Of course, I think you should always provide a breath sample as a prosecutor. and in general, but I also think there's a common misconception, and I think a lot of lay people think that .08, if I blow below that, I can't be charged with DUI.
Sure.
That's not the case. We call it the legal limit, but it's kind of misleading to use that term because you can still be charged with DUI even if you blow a .05. If they think that you were at .08 when this accident occurred or when you were stopped and then you just blow below the .08 at the time of that breath test, you can still be charged. You can also be impaired through drugs and other substances as well.
And I guess it's important to say, like, if you do refuse a breathalyzer, what are the penalties for that?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that come. Of course, it's always your choice whether you want to give that breath sample or not, but it does come with some heavy penalties. Right now, if you refuse, it's an automatic 6-month suspension of your driver's license, and you're informed before you make that decision that if you refuse, it's going to be used against you if your case goes to trial.
And why in South Carolina don't they have breathalyzers in the field? Why do you have to go back to the police station to give a sample?
So that's just something that's not been established yet in South Carolina. I know a lot of people, and we see it constantly, they're like, well, you didn't even breathalyze me at the site. How am I getting arrested? So that's something that tricks people up constantly too, is the fact that we actually take you to what we refer to as the BA room, but it's a data master machine that they'll use to get that breath test.
And let's talk a little about the probable cause, and I'll start with you, Kelsey, but I want to hear from Ricky as well. It seems like somewhat subjective as what is going to influence an officer to, no pun intended, to arrest somebody or not. So when you think of probable cause in these situations, what are you looking at as a prosecutor?
So as a prosecutor and as an attorney in general, our big thing is totality of the circumstances, and that's what officers are looking for when they make that stop. You'll see a DUI a lot of times start with failure to maintain lane, sometimes they start with speeding. There's a lot that makes that initial stop. Collisions as well. Once they get you roadside, field sobriety tests are optional as well. You don't have to complete those, but an officer has to go off what they have at that point. So do they smell an odor of alcohol? Do they feel like you have bloodshot, watery eyes? Are you slurring your speech? What was the reason for the stop? All those things go into their probable cause to make that DUI arrest.
Is the probable cause easier to make if the stop is based on some kind of bad driving, for lack of better terms, or in other words, if you're swerving or speeding versus you're on your phone or your tag is out of date? Does that make a difference to you as a prosecutor?
To me as a prosecutor, it's always great when I have a failure to maintain lane because we've got to prove for DUI that there's driving under the influence to the extent that you're what we call materially and appreciably impaired. So if I've got failure to maintain lane, if I've got a collision, things like that, that goes directly to, and I argue it goes directly to materially and appreciably impaired. Versus speeding, we might have done that coming here today.
Yep.
That's something that
You might have.
yes, maybe. So it does help, especially when we get into this case might become a trial case.
How about you, Ricky? What are your thoughts?
Well, a lot of times what you see, or what I've seen in the years, has been that someone is doing a normal thing. You know, that they might be speeding a little bit, they might have taken a turn a little bit too wide, or, you know, you see someone driving and an officer picks up on a thing that we wouldn't think would be illegal. You know, weaving within a lane is something I've seen a lot of times, and you know, our cars move along the road. It's not a perfectly straight line. And your common offenses where someone would get pulled over for a tag light and then they smell alcohol, at that point in time, it's pretty much like, okay, you're going to take the ride. And they do these field sobriety tests, and yes, you can refuse them, but what happens if you refuse? They're going to take you to jail. They're going to offer you the breathalyzer, and then at that point, you're going to take the ride. You're going to spend the night in jail.
Right.
So a lot of it is completely subjective. It's what the officer believes. Now, when it comes to trial, it's a different matter, and that's what we work on, trying to figure out, well, what are the things that would say my person is doing just fine? It's not because they had a drink at the bar.
Right.
And because of the area we live in, you know, we don't have a transit system. You can't hop on, you know, a subway, and you can't hop on a bus that's regularly going somewhere and go home. You know, all of our bars have parking lots. You go and have a drink, you're going to have to get home some way. Most people aren't walking. The danger is that you have 1 or 2 drinks and you get pulled over for a minor infraction, and they smell that alcohol, or even, you know, something that a minor hint of alcohol, you're going to get out of the car and you do some some magic tricks for the most part. Here, let's see how well you can stand on your foot.
Yeah.
And then you're going to take the ride. So to me, it seems very subjective unless you have someone where they're just all over the road.
Right.
And I personally don't see many of those. At least most of my clients don't have that issue.
All right, we're going to run to a break here real quick. When we get back, we would love to talk to you. If you have any questions about DUI, about any of the laws, or if you have something specific about somebody who's been arrested recently or charged with the DUI, please feel free to give us a call. We'll answer those questions for you coming up in just a second, right here on Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. This is Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. Today we're talking about DUI law. If you have any questions about the laws in general or something specific about a case that you or somebody you know is involved in, please feel free to give us a call. The phone number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. Here to answer your questions today from the Maguire Law Firm is Ian Maguire. Also from the solicitor's office is Kelsey Hall, and also defense attorney Ricky Todd. So thanks, guys, for being with us here. Now, Ian, your firm does basically personal injury, but with a lot of the car accident cases that you have, if somebody on the at-fault driver is found to be DUI at the time, how does that affect your case?
Well, it puts it in a whole different light as far as whether for settlement or in front of the jury. Now you have a punitive nature to the case. So frankly, the value of the case is completely different when you have somebody who's been drinking and driving and caused a collision. Even in cases, because the burden is different. So even in cases where if somebody pleads to a reckless driving, but they've been drinking and driving, the evidence of the drinking and driving is probably going to get into the civil trial, as well as a guilty plea of a reckless driving. So even if they avoid the finding a guilty charge in criminal court of a DUI, there's still a likelihood that the value of the case is going to be a lot larger.
Right.
So as terrible as it is that somebody makes a decision to drink and drive and causes injury for the person injured, it actually makes the case easier to get the value that of the loss, of the harms and losses that are incurred by the injured person. So, obviously sit down with an attorney or call an attorney if that's the case. It's like I said, there's if it goes to trial, a lot of time it's going to be bifurcated. There's going to be a finding of damages, and then there's going to be the issue of the drinking and driving will come in. Some defense attorneys don't want to bifurcate it for whatever reason, and and the jury will hear it all at once. But in either case, it seems like the vast majority of those cases settle. If that'll tell you anything, from a civil point of view.
And your word for the day is bifurcate. Use that at least once a little bit later on today. All right, guys. Now, back maybe 2 decades ago, I remember that the solicitor's office was overloaded with DUI cases, and they got an order from the Supreme Court that said you got to do something, and some of the diversion programs were come up with at that point in time. How has that helped with the backlog of DUI cases, diversion programs?
So the diversion programs are really helpful. We're big advocates of those. A lot of times if I see a problem, especially if I see someone has a drinking problem, those programs can be great to go ahead and fix an issue before it becomes bigger. So when we're dealing with a DUI first, especially a DUI first that didn't have any injuries, property damage, just your standard DUI first, those programs can be great as far as fixing a problem before it becomes a much larger issue.
Now, I know some of the laws, and you used to work in the solicitor's office as well, some of the laws that are out there right now, there are a lot of solicitors and prosecutors that think there's too many loopholes that are in the DUI laws. And because of that, I mean, they always use the example is that the DUI case law is like about 17 pages long, and for murder it's like a paragraph, whatever it is. But is some new things that are going on as far as Columbia is concerned with the legislature are looking at strengthening the DUI laws out there. What's the latest on that? I know you guys are probably keeping up.
Yeah, I've been keeping up on that. Obviously, I'm a really big fan of that. Hope it passes in its entirety. It's really reworking a lot of that DUI law. And like you said, that DUI law is extensive. If anyone hasn't read the DUI law, go give it a look. It is long. It is a long statute with a lot of loopholes. Some of the most notable things in the bill is right now, if you are injured in a DUI accident, we don't really have a moderate bodily injury. We either have it like you weren't injured, or you're killed in that accident, or you've got serious bodily injury. There's no medium right now, and so this is proposing a moderate bodily injury, which would be amazing for our victims and things of that nature. Also, it's more severe punishments when it comes to that BA. We talked earlier about a BA. If you don't give that breath test, it's going to suspend you for 6 months. This new law proposes a year of that. So it's really reworking from the top down that DUI law. It's making video requirements a lot less stringent than they are right now. So I'm a big backer of this law.
Ricky, what are you thinking?
I mean, everyone wants a strong law that prevents injuries from happening, prevents things from going wrong. But from what I've seen over the years, the more you keep adding to a law, it makes it actually more difficult. We've got these pages and pages of law for DUIs and DUAC. Specifically, and the plan was, that way the laws can be stronger. There's less that can go wrong at trial. Well, what you do is if you try to fine tune that, then you end up making additional rules, criteria that have to be met. I don't think anybody says, hey, drinking and driving is great. It's fun, but you're taking something that's a legal thing to do. You're allowed to drink, unless you're underage and things like that, but something that we're allowed to do, we're allowed to drive, and you keep infringing all these things on it. And adding these additional penalties for not providing a breath sample, that's like saying, well, you didn't do what we want, so we're going to punish you harder. Especially in an area like this where we have no one, for the most part, works right where they live. You suspend someone's license, now you're taking away their ability to get to work. You're creating a new issue.
Right.
So you have these additional hurdles that we're trying to create more evidence for a prosecution side, but are we looking out for the public in that? Again, I'm not proposing that that we want DUIs to be a legal thing, but as far as the penalties for not providing the government with what they want from them seems to be infringing on certain rights.
And if we could take the time and money and really just put out there, that now ride shares are so easily accessible. 30 years ago, getting a cab took forever in Myrtle Beach. It's not like that anymore. So I'm not being preachy about it. I'm just saying it's so accessible. And if we just remind people, to take that step before they start drinking, make that decision, I should say, it make a huge difference, because at the end of the day, if God forbid you killed someone when you're drinking and driving, you go looking at jail, whatever it is, 15 years or a significant amount of time. You're really doing the same exact action, might not hurt anybody. So then, you get essentially, maybe you're not getting jail time probably, right? If it's the first time, where the action was presumably similar to the same. So it's really, if we can bring awareness to people, because people make mistakes, and it's just horrible for everybody when you see these these tragic things happen. Right? I know we got to run to a break, Dave.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and run to our break right now. When we get back, we'll have our final segment. So you got about 10 minutes left if you want to give us a call and get on the air here today about DUI laws. If you have any questions about the laws in general, or something specific about a case that you're involved in, or a loved one, whatever the case may be, 843-848-8080. Give us a call. We'll be back in about 90 seconds right here on Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. DUI law, that's our topic here today on Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. On your panel here today to answer your DUI law questions is Ian Maguire from the Maguire Law Firm, also Kelsey Hall from the Solicitor's Office, and Ricky Todd is here as well as a defense attorney. So give us a call. We're well equipped to answer any question that you might have. And Kelsey, you brought up earlier as far as a breathalyzer, if you blow under the 0.08 limit, you might be still arrested. Now, obviously, DUI stands for driving under the influence. It doesn't say influence of alcohol, it's just influence. So you could be on prescription drugs or non-prescription drugs and still get a DUI arrest, correct?
Yes, sir. That's, I think that's where people get confused. I mean, the DUI law in and of itself is confusing, but even with prescription drugs, just because you have a prescription for XYZ medications, those can still impair you. And a lot of times people don't think about that because they think my doctor's prescribing them, so I'm going to take them as prescribed.
Right.
But if those on the bottle, and a lot of times they'll tell you, if it says, you know, be careful when operating heavy machinery, things like that, they're going to impair your ability to be able to actually operate that motor vehicle.
And heavy machinery is not necessarily a forklift or a crane. A car also is heavy
Yes.
machinery, in case you didn't realize that.
Yeah. And before the break, Dave, we were talking about accessibility to rideshare, and Ricky pointed out that, yeah, in Myrtle Beach it might be easy to get Uber, but it's not so simple maybe in the rural areas. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. And one of the things that, you know, we have clients that are all over the state, and they're not necessarily going to be in the bigger cities. And I mean, Myrtle Beach isn't, you know, a metropolis, but again, it's a place that has a lot more access to other places. You know, one of the things that I'd mentioned is it wasn't until recently that we had access to Uber and different ride-sharing apps and stuff in Georgetown, the city of Georgetown. You know, one of the things that I think would help is pushing those type of transportation and focusing on how can we make things safer. So if someone does have a drink somewhere, they have easier access to those different ways of getting home or getting to and from places. And it would make it less likely for someone to take a risk if they go, well, I only had 3 drinks or I only had 4 drinks and I can't get home. Where do I go?
Yeah.
So if they have access to those things, and that would be something rather than focusing on how can we change the DUI law, well, let's change some other things. It's been working. Clearly, you get plenty of convictions, and there's plenty of arrests made, and there's lives saved through that. But if we didn't have so many arrests because people were taking the time and had access to these things, that would probably change the outlook on, well, we're focusing on the criminal aspect. Well, let's focus on not having it happen.
And designated driving is something that we, you know, that always can be a good reminder to do. You know, if somebody is going out and have one person that's sort of designated on that night to not drink and drive, right?
Yeah, we've only got a couple of minutes left in the show. We did talk about roadside or field sobriety tests, but the roadside sobriety test or the field sobriety test, those are not mandatory as well. I mean, what are you required to do if a police officer pulls you over and says, "I need you to get out of the car right now because you're being detained for a DUI, suspicion of DUI"?
I mean, for the most part, you're supposed to give them your information. They're going to ask you for your things you're supposed to have, your license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. That's what you need to provide. If you don't have those things, you're going to have issues. But other than that, you don't have to do the field sobriety test. It's your choice.
Yes.
And as someone who's had a couple of medical issues, I wouldn't be able to stand on one foot or walk and turn and stuff like that. And my eyes are a little wonky too. So as far as following a pen, I don't think that any of those tests would be valid on me. And I'm sure there's other people in the same boat as that.
Yeah, and they do some different tests to account for that. And also they'll ask you before to, if you've got any medical conditions and things, that way they can take account of that.
Tell you what, we're going to wrap up our show. We appreciate you watching here today. Next week when we get back together, as we're heading into summer, we're going to be doing a summer safety show. So that's all coming up next week. I want to thank Ricky Todd, also Kelsey Hall, and Ian Maguire for being here. My name is Dave Priest. We'll see you again next Thursday right here on Legal Access on WMBF News.
You may wish to consult a lawyer to obtain case-specific legal advice. Information regarding lawyers can be located online or by contacting the South Carolina Bar Lawyer Referral Service, toll-free at 1-800-868-2284. If you are currently represented by an attorney, you should direct all legal questions to your attorney. The nature of any legal issue may depend on a multitude of factors. Therefore, the information provided in